I recently drove across the entire northern US with my fiance Rachel and our dog Ricky to move from Vermont to Washington State. We did it in 8 days and we stayed in 8 Airbnbs and hotels. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to teach you guys how to do quick and dirty home inspections with a focus on indoor air quality and health. But this method isn't just about health, it's about how well built and well maintained a house has been from its roof to its plumbing. This method can be used when looking for homes to rent or buy, Airbnbs or hotels to stay in, or even to assess the home you currently live in. This is especially relevant to those of us who are sensitive to mold. Honestly though, mold is bad for everyone and can cause symptoms most of us don't even associate with mold. See my video about mold illness for more information. But this video is actually about far more than just home health assessment and inspection. As we traveled across the country, lots of interesting scenarios arose that allowed me to answer some important questions that you guys have been asking. Questions like, is outdoor air really cleaner than indoor air? Is opening windows a reliable way to bring outdoor air into your home? How do different parts of the US compare in terms of buildings, types of air quality issues? How healthy are Airbnb guest favorites to stay in? And a lot more. Welcome to the Healthy Home Guide. This is a place where I share practical tips for creating a safe and healthy home, whether the word home refers to your house or your body. Please go ahead and like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone you know who's looking for a new home. Back to the video. So planning this trip across the country made me a bit anxious. Given that I'm still recovering from mold illness, I was pretty hesitant to stay in so many different buildings without knowing for sure whether they'll trigger debilitating symptoms I've struggled with in the past, like severe eczema, nasal allergies, digestive issues, etc. However, I do feel a lot better than I did 6 months ago, and we really want to live in Washington State. So I went for it. So what Rachel and I did was try to book Airbnbs or hotels that we felt had the lowest chance of being unhealthy. First, we only booked Airbnb guest favorites, which have high ratings. Second, we searched reviews and eliminated options with the following keywords: mold, mildew, stink, smell, and odor. We felt better about options with the keyword clean. Third, and this wasn't always easy to see from the pictures, but we looked at external and internal indicators of water damage. I'll introduce these in a bit and discuss them throughout the video. Fourth, we requested that the host not use scent diffusers, spray fragrances, air fresheners, etc. on the day before our stay. We didn't start off requesting this at first, but we realized we needed to. Here's the blurb we used: you can steal it. Fragrance is a huge problem in the Airbnb world. If someone uses it, you should ask yourself the question, I wonder what they're trying to hide. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember this: a truly clean house has no odor at all. Anyway, sometimes we had to book Airbnbs that we knew weren't optimal because of limited availability in a given location, date, or under our budget. For instance, we tried to find places without carpeting, but that was almost never possible. Also, choosing places that don't use fragrance was not possible for us. Multiple places said they don't use it, and their bedding turned out to be heavily scented with detergent or dryer sheets, or there were smelly soaps or even scent diffusers left out. But requesting no fragrances beforehand did seem to help minimize the use of fragrance sprays. Here are some tips for looking on websites for rentals or to buy. For rentals, be wary of homes that stay listed on the rental site for more than a couple weeks without being rented, especially in densely populated areas. Price history on Zillow will show you this. And whether you're looking to buy or rent, be wary of homes that were bought and sold frequently, more than a few times per decade. Check sale history on Redfin for this. Another point, the older a home is, the more of a chance it has historical water damage and mold. But newer homes can definitely have mold too. Now I'll tell you about the features I look for when doing quick, healthy home assessments. You can see some of these features in the pictures on the listing, but many can only be discovered in person. I start by looking at the exterior of the house, and I'm mainly looking for signs that water could be leaking into the structure and causing mold to grow behind the walls, floors, and ceilings, which can affect the health of the occupants even if it's not visible from inside the home. I start at the ground and then move upward. First, I make sure the ground isn't sloping down towards the foundation, which can hold rainwater against and under the foundation. Through capillary action, that water can wick up into the foundation, floor, and walls and grow massive amounts of mold. This is called rising damp. Look at how it appears that moisture is diffusing up. This is a big red flag in a house. One way to prevent this is having the ground slope down from the foundation, 6 inches down, measured from 10 feet away, ideally. Rising damp can also be caused by gutter and downspout problems, which I'll discuss in a bit. For now, let's move upwards and look at the foundation itself. There should be at least 6 inches of foundation exposed before the siding begins. Many homes do not meet this criteria. It's not a deal breaker by itself, but it's definitely a red flag to just note. The foundation also shouldn't have any cracks. Moving upwards, let's look at the siding. Are there any discolored areas? Look around windows and where roofs meet walls especially. This can be a sign that water is leaking into the home. Moving upwards still, we can start to understand the potential causes of the stained siding. The first thing I ask, how deep are the overhangs? A study of 46 homes found that almost 90% of the exterior walls with no overhang had water damage. This is a house with no overhangs with the siding stripped off. In contrast, only 25% of the walls with a 2-foot overhang, so a very deep overhang, had problems. The deeper the overhang, the less of a chance of water damage. Moving upwards, let's look at the gutters and downspouts, a crucial system that gets water down and away from a building. There should be gutters, first and foremost. They also definitely shouldn't have plants growing from them. The downspout extension should extend at least 10 feet from the foundation. In most places I've seen, almost no homes have extensions that long, unfortunately. So moving upwards still, we look at the roof. Is it simple or elaborate? Though elaborate roofs look nice, simple roofs perform much better. We often forget that the primary function of a house is to live in, not to look at. And this goes for the rest of the house too. Any unique architectural features like bay windows and skylights tend not to perform well either. Are there funky building materials used like you'll see later in the video? If a material isn't widely used, there's probably a reason why. When it comes to homes, simpler is better. We also just want to make sure the roof is in decent condition. It's okay if there's a little staining on it, but it shouldn't be growing tons of moss and looking super old. Anyway, that's it for the basic exterior features. Let's now move into the interior of the house. After walking inside, I try to notice my first reaction to being in the space. What do I smell? Is it musty? Filled with fragrance? Do I feel off? Your first reaction is arguably the most important thing to pay attention to. Then I primarily inspect places water flows to. Before I tell you which places I'm referring to, I need to tell you what to look for. The classic signs of water damage: staining, bubbling, cracking, peeling, rust, and efflorescence, which usually presents as a whitish residue from water carrying salts to a material's surface. Where there are these signs, there is almost always mold, even if you can't see it. Contrary to popular belief, a mold problem usually doesn't appear as the classic black splotches you'd expect. It's almost always hidden below a material's surface that has those signs I mentioned. Given that mold can start growing within 24 hours, a leak is rarely just a leak. Think of how much can grow in a slow leak that has gone unnoticed for years. Another point, not all toxic mold is black. It can be many different colors. Moving on, so where exactly do I look? First, under the kitchen sink and around the bottom of the dishwasher. So then I check whether or not there's a kitchen exhaust system. These are incredibly important for removing the huge amounts of pollutants generated by cooking. In some areas, they're common. In others, they're pretty rare. Sometimes there will be an actual range hood, which works best, but sometimes there will just be a microwave that may or may not exhaust to the outside. If it's not clear, check for a duct in the cabinets above the microwave. Then I move to the bathroom and look under the sink, around the base of the toilet, the baseboard below the toilet supply valve, and around the shower, especially this area of the threshold and where the wall meets the ceiling. Then I check to see that there is a bathroom exhaust fan and that it turns on. If I have time, I also check that it sucks by putting a square of toilet paper up to it, and I check that it vents to the outside. There is a surprising amount of places that do not vent to the outside. They vent to the attic instead. This can be a huge problem in a house. Then I move to the washing machine and check the ground under it and wall behind it for signs of water damage. I also smell the washer and dryer for excessive fragrances because they can be difficult to remove and can make your clothes smelly for a long time. Then I check the windows and external door frame for signs of water damage. Then the ceilings. Then I check to see if the carpets are gross and high pile, which you really don't want ideally. Then I check the HVAC system and hot water heater to see if they're old, corroded, or leaking. This usually isn't possible in Airbnbs because they're typically locked away. Lastly, I collect some data. The following metrics are more applicable for assessing your current place because they take some time to obtain. So I like to measure carbon dioxide, temperature and humidity, carbon monoxide at low level to check for little leaks, and particle count. How do you know when to walk away from a home based on this inspection method? I really wish I could give you a concrete answer, but that can vary significantly based on the overall quality of houses in your location, your budget, timeline, how environmentally sensitive you are, etc. You'll get a feel as you search for homes yourself. So I tried to make this list of features as comprehensive as is feasible for quick inspections, but it's not exhaustive. There are other important health relevant features such as EMFs, but I'll leave that for another video. Keep in mind that this inspection method cannot catch everything. One reason why is because landlords or inexperienced house flippers can mask water damage by repainting and remodeling, so it's hidden instead of properly remediated. I've heard that practice called lipstick on a pig, and I love that. Seeing the phrases newly remodeled, updated, or freshly painted in a listing is not necessarily a good thing. Another limitation of this method is that water damage can occur in spaces that are not visible, or in places that we can't feasibly go during a quick inspection, like attics or crawl spaces. The last thing I want to say before taking you on our cross-country journey with walkthroughs is this. When critiquing these Airbnbs, I don't mean to insult any of the hosts. Most people just don't know how to make a home healthy, and I don't necessarily blame them. Anyway, here are the walkthroughs. It's day one and we've arrived in upstate New York. Just so this video isn't hours long, I won't go over every single assessment feature, just the notable ones in each Airbnb. First thing, these gardens right up against the foundation are bad for drainage. Next thing, a decent amount of the foundation is exposed before the siding begins, which is good. However, it is cracked, which can let water in. Not good. The roof here is flat, that can cause roof leaks. The siding here is also kind of bowed. One great feature are these downspout extensions, which are longer than I typically see. Moving inside, the first thing I notice is a moderately strong smell of fragrance. So what I do in this situation is try to locate the source and put it outside. Under the kitchen sink appears to show some staining, probably from a leak. It smells musty and there's certainly mold here. Check out this exhaust fan light in the bathroom. I haven't seen one like that before. High pile carpets upstairs, unfortunately. Moving on to the metrics, CO2 concentration is almost 1200 ppm. It should be below 1000 and ideally below 800. It's extremely humid outside today and the outdoor air quality is terrible, so we didn't want to open up windows to lower it. This house isn't unique in that it doesn't have any sort of temperature and humidity controlled filtered ventilation system like an energy recovery ventilator. So when outdoor conditions are not right, which is honestly most of the year in this region, you don't get enough fresh air. This place has central AC and the temperature is 69 and the RH is 70%, which gives us a dew point of 59, which is already getting humid even with the windows closed. That's right around that indoor dampness threshold of 60 that research shows can grow mold that causes illness if you exceed. With open windows, we would exceed this threshold for much of the summer, even this far north. Dew point is 73 outside today here, which is oppressively humid. For more information on humidity and calculating dew point, check out my videos about dehumidification and air conditioning after you finish watching this one. Moving on, our low-level carbon monoxide monitor shows 0 ppm, as it always should. Moving on, here's where things get interesting. This is my Dylos DC1100 Pro. It shows overall particle count above 0.5 microns on the left and larger particles on the right. We'll primarily focus on the overall count on the left. It's a bit above 2,000. This is poor air quality. So why is it so high? Well, likely because it's high outside, around 6,300, way worse. It's over 3 times higher outside today. So now I'm going to get on my soapbox a bit. It's a vast oversimplification to say that outdoor air is cleaner than indoor air. Sure, VOC concentrations are typically much lower outside, and certain indoor activities like cooking generate lots of particulate, but the particle count is typically higher outside than inside. I'll show you a bunch of examples of that in this video. This is one of the many reasons why I use a filtered fresh air intake like an ERV instead of opening windows, and why opening windows is not a substitute for using an air purifier. It's day 2 and we're in northwestern Ohio. I definitely have some thoughts about this area. I'll start with the positive. Most of the houses have practical, simple designs, deep overhangs, and long downspout extensions. Awesome. The negative, outside it smelled heavily of chemicals, whether it was pesticides from nearby farms, fragrances from the houses. We ended up calling this Fragranceville, Ohio. When intaking fresh air in this area, you'd probably benefit from some sort of carbon filter. Fresh air here was not fresh, at least during our stay. Can anyone from the Midwest share your experience with this? Okay, let's talk about the Airbnb. Overall, the outside looks pretty good, but one small area of concern is that the ground next to the foundation is cracked, which can indicate that water pools here. Why might that be? There isn't much of a slope here, number one, and also these buried downspout extensions can fail and drench the foundation if they get clogged with debris, if water freezes in them and breaks them, if they're not installed properly, etc. Better to have the extension above the ground, but I don't see anything hugely concerning here, no rising damp at least. The first thing we noticed upon walking in here was that there was an extremely cloying fragrance smell, and the word cloying was made for this exact situation. It smelled like somebody had just sprayed Febreze all over the place right before we walked in. So what we did was, even though it was oppressively hot and humid outside with a dew point of 74, we were forced to open the windows, which helped a little, but we both still had headaches and brain fog from the fragrance. It was after this experience that we decided to request no fragrances in advance. Moving on, under the kitchen sink there's mold. The door seal also has mold on it, and so does the weather stripping on the frame and on the top. Anyone have any theories about what this door mold could be from? There's a lot of dust near this supply vent. This should be vacuumed. Once again, the cursed high pile carpets in the bedrooms. Let's look at our metrics. I'll skip to the particles. We're a little bit above 1,000, which according to Dylos is poor. I wonder what it is outside. Like last time, it's almost 6 times higher outside. Onward we go, through Chicago. I have never in my life seen so many semi-trucks or smelled such strong exhaust fumes, and I have lived in a big city before. So we renamed Chicago Truckville, Illinois. Truckville's metro population is 10 million. Car exhaust is a significant problem in super big cities like this. Comment if you live here and experience that. It's day 3 and we've arrived at our hotel in South Central Wisconsin. This hotel looks to have been constructed fairly recently. Drainage often works differently in these flat-roofed commercial buildings. This is a scupper drain, which drains water off the side here and down. There are probably also internal roof drains, which drain water through pipes in the building. Moving inside, we were so relieved because it didn't smell like strong fragrance, just a subtle smell of dirty carpet and detergent-y fabric. My first impression of this bathroom is that it's really luxurious, but let's look below the surface. We see some wetness at the toilet base and some staining on the other side. This toilet is likely leaking under the floor. As for the shower, if you use it, you find out that the super short threshold does little to keep water off the tile floor. Water runs off the curtain and onto the floor. This needs a taller threshold. Looking at the particle count, it's above 1,000, which is again poor. Moving outside, again, almost 7 times more particles. And dew point today is a very humid 70. Onward. It's day 4 and we're in northwestern Minnesota. Houses around here are often beautiful and newer. The downspout extensions are fantastic. Check out these examples. Here's our Airbnb. This was probably built within the past few years. It has French drains, which I don't love because some water can run off them and onto the foundation, as appears to be happening here. It also has these flip-up downspout extensions. I had never seen these. They can be convenient for mowing, but of course they tend to just get left up, like I saw here, here, and here. Inside the house, I first noticed a strong smell of new building materials off-gassing. I love this fan because it looks like it was inspired by the seed pods that maple trees spiral to the ground. Comment if you love nature-inspired design as well. This tub trim is really good because it's basically flashing that prevents water from getting under the floor. These one-piece tub showers are also great. It looks like we also have an ERV or HRV, so that's great to see. And of course, in the bedrooms, we once again have high pile carpet. Can't escape it, can we? And Ricky loved this doorstop. The CO2 concentration is below 1,000 for the first time on this trip, likely because of the ERV or HRV, but it's not that far below 1,000. It's not bringing in that much fresh air. So it hasn't sufficiently diluted the VOCs from the off-gassing building materials. So I feel kind of puffy and foggy in this house. Outdoor dew point is 63 today, so it's still too humid to open up windows and get a lot of fresh air in that way. The particle count is the lowest we've seen at 380 or so, which Dylos considers fair, so it's still not good. Outside, once again, the count is higher at 480, so air quality isn't quite as bad as it has been lately. By the way, if you're concerned that I've been putting the particle counter on the ground, this is just to show you that the count doesn't change significantly if I elevate it. What really matters is measuring when there's minimal wind.
What do you think of North Dakota?
I'm honestly speechless. And it's not because I'm like amazed or anything. It's not that kind of speechless. It's more of like, there's not much to say. Okay, now it's starting to get cool. Look at those. Right, Ricky? Here's the Airbnb in western North Dakota. This building looks to be very old. Decaying wood porch here, smells musty. Siding against the ground is decaying, water damage here. But the absolute saving grace of this building in terms of preventing window and wall intrusion are these overhangs. What a beautiful sight these are. There's a depression in the roof. Whether that's from a tree falling or from a winter ice event, it's hard to say. Look at this amazingly long downspout extension. Here it is. That's all it is, as far as the eye can see, which is not that far. First thing I notice is that it smells like a college dorm, like someone is masking certain smells with dryer sheets, but it's not overpowering. Looking under the kitchen sink, we see efflorescence. We also see some staining in here, so those are signs of mold. No carpets, so that's good. Here's where things get interesting. Remember the depression in the roof? The ceiling is bowed down too. There's a crack here, and it looks like somebody did some repairing here. In the bathroom, there's cracking on the ceiling, which is often a sign of water damage. The wallpaper near the ceiling shows maybe some bubbling. This can be seen lower down as well, so it's hard to know if somebody just installed this poorly or if it's water damage. What do you think? Comment below. For cooling, we have an antique AC. The funny thing about this AC is that it says the air exchanger is open, which is supposed to mean it's ventilating the space. But if we look at the CO2 concentration, it's high, above 1500. Like I've said, these ACs say they ventilate, but they really don't. The outdoor dew point is 61, so still slightly humid and above our threshold of indoor dampness, but I wanted to ventilate to show you guys something. So I opened the windows about an hour ago. Did it work? Let's check the CO2. Doesn't look like it. This is a small space, so CO2 is going to build, but this is exhibit A of how sometimes opening windows doesn't bring in outdoor air as reliably as people think it does. Why do you think it didn't work here? Comment below. The particle count is not good, really not good. The larger count on the right is by far the highest we've seen, and it goes to show how quickly particles can build in a small space, especially with any sort of activity. Whenever we move around, this goes up to an insane degree. Fun fact, larger particles are more easily resuspended. And this time, in a turn of events, the particle count is actually much, much lower outside. I'm not sure of the last time I've seen it this low outside. There's not much in the air in this part of North Dakota. Not much except the smell of lavender and pine. We're near the Badlands, and the energy here is the most placid and zen that I've ever experienced in a place. I'm sure it would be deeply healing to spend time here. To be a wild horse. To be a wild horse roaming these lands. It's day 6 and we're in western Montana. We've crossed the US moisture line, so now we're in the dry region of the US. Outdoor dew point is now 45, and I'm rejoicing about that. We're staying in this building. Here's one great feature. One thing that presents a significant air quality issue for residents here is that restaurants exhaust lots of particles and gases from cooking through these massive vents. So if you want fresh air here, it's harder to come by. The first thing I notice inside is that it smells like a doctor or dentist's office. It's also very nice. Look at this window with this view. The kitchen sink is square, which seems pretty at first, and then you realize that food gets caught in these indents here, and there's no easy way to get it out because the faucet doesn't pull out and spray. This aligns with the philosophy of the rest of the place, where I think aesthetics was valued over function, which I don't like because function is so intertwined with health. So this shower is another example of aesthetics over function. Elegant looking shower, but when you take a closer look, you realize that because this threshold is not nearly tall enough, water flows right over it and is causing peeling on this baseboard and darkening on the grout. There's very likely mold under here. One good thing is the bathroom exhaust has this awesome timer, so you don't have to remember to turn it off. Another example of aesthetics over function is this antique furniture. This is water damage and mold. It may look charming, but this is a moldy object that you have in your living space. There are a bunch of others here too. Let's look at yet another example of aesthetics over function. In the winter, the surface of this giant window will be very cold and will suck tons of heat from the occupants' bodies through radiation. I can pretty much guarantee you that in the winter, people in this room wonder why they're feeling cold even when the room temperature is supposedly comfortable. There's cracking and peeling here. The lack of overhangs may be contributing to this. This pipe has some staining, and I'm not sure what it is. It doesn't appear to be connected to anything. It's not the HVAC duct because that's here. Anybody know? No carpets. There's no mechanical ventilation here as CO2 was 1540 in my bedroom. The particle count is relatively decent compared to the other places, but this still isn't great. Air purifiers would majorly help. Outside, I'm around the side of the building without restaurant exhaust, and as usual, particle count is higher outside. It's day 7 and we're in eastern Washington with a dew point of 43, so dry and comfortable. Check out this super interesting house. Everything is painted in a thick coat of blue paint. It looks funky and bohemian, but the issue with that is that it masks signs of historical water damage. This house appears to be pretty old, and it was painted, I think, within the past few years. These overhangs are absolutely legendary, though. Comment legendary overhangs if you've made it to this point. This is a low slope roof with a membrane material that I think is TPO. This is rare in houses, and that makes me wary. It can be done properly, but it requires a very knowledgeable contractor who understands that a roof is a system that needs to ventilate. This job seems a bit shoddy. I mean, look at that fold. Another concern here is that there's a tree right above the roof, which can clog the gutters. But the good thing is that there are gutter guards, at least. Inside this beautiful space, it smells slightly musty. That's a bad sign. Let's see if we can locate the source of it. This unique architectural feature is something to inspect. Check out this efflorescence and staining here. This could be a leak from around the chimney, perhaps. Okay, I found a potential explanation for the musty odor. This is a utility closet with a hot water heater. Original floor here. Let's see what's behind the curtain. Look at all this staining on the wall and on the floor. Musty smell in here. When you have this odor, that likely means that the water damage is extensive and the mold is actively growing. More concerningly, this house was recently renovated, so other evidence of water damage has been masked and is likely still present below the surface. The bedrooms once again have high pile carpet, but Ricky likes it. The particle count is not bad, but I wouldn't conclude that this house is safe purely based on that raw count. Certain mold species are highly toxic even in low concentrations. Moving outside, the count is very similar. One thing about this area is that there are a lot of really old cars here. I think old cars are pretty cool, but their exhaust is incredibly smelly and unhealthy to breathe. We're driving towards western Washington, and check this out, the Columbia River Gorge. Isn't that amazing? It's day 8 and we've arrived in western Washington. So we're now in the marine region of the US. The humidity stays in a moderate range here, rarely very humid or very dry. That's the main reason I wanted to move here, honestly. I hate humidity for many reasons. The dew point today is a comfortable 50. Here's the long-term Airbnb we're staying in while we look for a more permanent rental. There's staining on the siding below the window here. The overhangs might be too short and plus maybe insufficient window flashing. We actually have the same problem on the other side with the short overhangs. And notably, the windows underneath the deeper overhang sides don't have staining below them. Even though we requested no fragrances, there were still 2 scent diffusers left out. Cat hair was everywhere, the floors were dirty, indoor plants were moldy, under the sinks were a little bit moldy, and I felt a bit sneezy, so I HEPA vacuumed and I microfiber mopped. Look at how dirty the mop is after vacuuming. I felt less sneezy after that. We have opened windows here because humidity is low enough to do so, and CO2 is very low because there's a cross breeze. A drawback of opening windows is that whatever the particle count is outside, that's what it'll be inside as well. Look at how high it was the morning after the July 4th fireworks. Fireworks cause extremely poor air quality for like 24 to 48 hours. Anyway, we've been searching for a long-term rental, and this process has been eye-opening to me in terms of just how many homes have serious water damage and mold issues. The rentals we've seen have been way worse than the Airbnb guest favorites. The first 5 rentals we saw had visible mold in the bathrooms that wasn't shown in the listing's pictures. When there are actually visible mold colonies on the surface, that's usually indicative of a much more extensive infestation below the surface. Don't forget to look where the ceiling meets the wall. So how did I do symptom-wise on this trip? Throughout the trip, I've experienced some minor itchy eczema flare-ups after fragrance and mold exposures, and at times I've been scared that the flare-ups would become more severe, but they haven't yet, so that's been a relief. I still don't feel my best, and I think I'll feel better once we move into a healthier house and I can set up my air purifiers, a filtered ventilation system, and can clean more. I'm happy to say that after 3 weeks and looking at hundreds of listings online and 10 in person, yesterday, we finally found a great rental in great condition that we're really excited about. Unfortunately, we can't move in for a month though. This experience reaffirmed for me that good things really do come to those who wait. Being patient is extremely difficult for me, but this search really showed me the value in it. So the question, Are Airbnb guest favorites healthy? Some places are worse than others, but overall, I would say no, not really. Between the fragrances, mold, carpets, lack of air purification, and lack of ventilation, no, not particularly healthy. I did like that central AC is common though. There are absolutely way worse places than these guest favorites, I will say. My hope is that you use this healthy home inspection system not only to protect yourself and your loved ones, but also to help create lasting change in our collective healthy home practices. How exactly? Well, first, leave reviews. Kind, balanced, objective, non-emotional reviews. Simply list the facts, the observations, praise the positive aspects of the house, and also highlight the potentially unhealthy with the goal of making indoor air quality more of a priority for Airbnb and hotel owners. But you can't exactly leave reviews when you're looking for homes to buy or rent, so take pictures of red flags and share them with your friends or family who know you're searching. Next, if you're building a home, make sure to work with companies who understand how important it is to prevent water damage. We as consumers must create the demand for the product or experience that we want. If we want our buildings to be healthier for us, we have to become the demand for healthier buildings. And sure, it's a tough world we live in, not knowing whether walking into a building will make us sick. There is no regulatory body that will protect us. There is no IEP who cares about our health as much as we do, or who could possibly have as much insight into our own homes as we can. I mean, we live there 24/7. Don't get me wrong, we can and should still get help from IEPs if we need it, but primarily we have to rely on ourselves. We have to be renegades. Subscribe to my channel and I will help you feel empowered, not overwhelmed. Let's you and me spread knowledge, not doom. Share this video with someone who needs it and like it so it gets a broader reach. If you've made it this far, comment, "I'm part of the Deep Overhang Club." I want to thank architect Cheryl Seco, Dr. Allison Bales, and Change the Air Foundation for their amazing content about water damage. Anyway, I'm really proud to have brought you this video, and I hope you find your healthy home.